fun shirt time of year. It's definitely around Memorial Day, I think, is when you start wearing the fun shirts. That's I was like, we're close enough. We can definitely pull them off. I am also happy for it to be a Friday, ready to have the long weekend. That's pretty exciting. Gonna go into a cocoon and hibernate for 3 days, I believe. That's my plan. How about you? You got any plans?
Work, unfortunately. I gotta work this weekend. But otherwise, I would love to hibernate, and then you wake up and it's summer.
That's right. That's exactly how it's going to happen. I wish I could hibernate through summer too. Now that I'm thinking about it, that'd be good. You excited for Summer Game Fest?
It's rapidly approaching.
It is
and I have a list of things I need to get done before then, and I'm like, I'm so excited to go out to LA, see everybody, to do the thing. But I'm like, I have so much I need to do before we get there. And it is, every moment is just like, oh, it's 2 weeks. We're almost there.
Do you think the Nasty Boys will be prepared for their couch segment on Giant Bomb at night?
I think the real question is Giant Bomb prepared for the Nasty Boys segment?
I can guarantee that we are not. I can firmly state that unequivocally in this moment. There's no way we will be able to brace ourselves for what that's going to happen there. The Android says, do you all have faction shirts? Yeah, that's a good idea.
We've been planning some bits. Okay. We've been working on. We've been workshopping.
Okay, listen, that's all I need to know. You guys bring whatever energy you need to bring. There was a talk of having to move you guys around because of a movie star coming in, and I said no way, I'm not doing it. So Nasty Boys remain in the segment they've already had. I'm very excited.
Appreciate it.
All right, you know what? Let's explain what we do here. Most weekdays, I, Jeff Grubb, will help piece your gaming life back together. That includes breaking news and maybe even some of our own original reporting. For all these topics, I'll get the input of a bona fide expert who will make me look smart. If you are watching live on Twitch, welcome. You can always listen to the show later on podcast feeds by searching for Game Mess Mornings or find the RSS on giantbomb.com. You can also catch the show later with chapters and timestamps on YouTube. Hello, YouTube. All right, we have a lot to get into, so let's start the morning mess with Armored Core 6 isn't the end of the beloved mech series. This is from Ethan Gotch at Kotaku. Armored Core 6 Fires of Rubicon is incredible, but despite some glowing reviews and high praise from the very dedicated and very particular fan base, it feels like the mech shooter's revival didn't quite make the large splash some had hoped for. Not to worry, though, Elden Ring creator and FromSoft president Hidetaka Miyazaki seems to believe that there are still more Armored Core stories to tell. While the latest fast-paced sci-fi shooter in the long-running series helped bring some of the world building and boss design from Dark Souls and Sekiro into the mix, Armored Core 6 didn't quite break out into the mainstream the way other previously more niche series like Persona have. Even so, Miyazaki indicated in a recent interview he's still proud of the game. The Armored Core series is very important to From Software, Miyazaki told IGN Japan, according to a translation from Fandom Wire via Games Radar. That's the way the industry works right there. We have a strong will to continue it in the future. I believe Armored Core 6 was a success. The creator, who assisted with the direction and early planning of the game, said not everything was perfect, suggesting the team wants to continue building on its new direction. I find this encouraging, Jesse. I'm someone who now considers themselves among From Software's fans. I have still never played, not really the Dark Souls games, but I played Sekiro, Elden Ring, Armored Core 6, and I love all three of those games quite a lot. Armored Core 6 is one where it's like, oh man, you could still sense their sensibilities when you're playing that game. There's a lot of stuff that I'm like, this feels like it's from the people that made all those other FromSoft games, and yet it's quite different in a lot of important ways. It's very Armored Core. That's what people tell me. I haven't played the previous Armored Core, so like, yeah, this is what Armored Core's always been. I'm like, well, that's great because Armored Core 6 rules. I think I'm happy to hear that this is a studio that is seeing how Armored Core 6 did, which I think it probably did okay, all things considered, and saying, we want to do more of that because we really liked making that game. And they probably do have that freedom with how well Elden Ring did, right? They could do the one for me, one for you sort of thing, although it seems like every game they do is for them. What do you think?
Yeah, I think Armored Core 6 is a fantastic game. If you haven't played Armored Core 6, I highly recommend it. It has the flexibility of something like an Elden Ring, where it's like you don't have to play, like Sekiro forces you to play a very specific way. Armored Core is like, mix and match your parts, figure out like what your build is, sort of like Dark Souls in that regard. But I think the thing is, like, FromSoft can kind of do whatever they want at this point. Like they've earned it. Their name recognition is just like Sekiro is published by Activision. Like big companies want to work with From Software, Bandai Namco, whatever. And so I think with Armored Core, it's like, okay, cool. We got to do the Elden Ring DLC that's going to make $1 billion. And then if we want to look at Armored Core again, Armored Core 7 or some other spin-off of Armored Core, like mech people are going to show up. The mech sickos are out there and they will always come back. And then you also have the From Software fans that are going to show up for this thing. Like you can't really lose that battle. So I feel like FromSoft is poised to do whatever they want next, post Elden Ring, post Armored Core 6. Like they're golden.
Yeah, and I think it's the kind of thing where the team seems to have a firm grasp on what they're tackling, and if they do decide to make another Armored Core, they know how to like fit that into their schedule going forward. I don't think that means like it's like, oh well, you won't have to wait a little bit extra time to get the next game in the series that maybe you prefer if you're a fan of FromSoft, but I think they still it's not going to like derail them completely or anything like that. And then I'm glad that they're like, hey, yeah, we want to make a game like Armored Core again, which is like you said, there is great things about the way Sekiro and Elden Ring and I'm sure Dark Souls all work that people are like, this is why we come here. We want this game to sort of put us in a position where we have to play in a certain way, but being able to express yourself and then have that ultimate action feeling that Armored Core 6 really captures, where I've just, like I've said before about that game, I've rarely felt cooler. It just makes me feel so dope playing that game. And makes my brain feel on fire in all the good ways. Kind of similar to what I was feeling like Mullet Mad Jack when I was playing that yesterday. It's like I want them to be able to play around in that space as much as they play around in any of these other spaces. So I find it very encouraging. Do you think there's the world in which this From Software studio tries to expand its like footprint so it can take on more projects at once, or do you think they would be afraid to do that?
Well, I correct me if I'm wrong, but like I do think that they are somewhat of a multi.
I believe they are a 2-team studio. At least a 2-team studio. I don't know if they're bigger than that.
I mean, absolutely. I guess it's just a question if they want to, like how much. Like once you have too many things going on at one time, right? It becomes a lot of plates to spin, and it seems like they're in their stride right now. Of like we can ship one game and be pretty close to shipping a second game, a year or two later, and kind of just keep leapfrogging one another to the point where it's like they've put out they put out Bloodborne, and then they put out Dark Souls 3, and then they like did a PSVR game. They were like, oh, here's Deracine, and then they turn around and then they're like, oh, here's Sekiro, here's DLC for Dark Souls 3, here's whatever. Like they're always cooking something, so they could expand, but I think they're in a really good spot right now, and I don't know if they want to shake anything up like that.
That would be my feeling on it, where it's like I think they're happy with where they're at right now. Obviously they could always hire on more people to help with the current teams, but I feel like trying to take on like one more team making one more game feels like it would be quite a lot and could risk upsetting the balance that has led them to this point so far. Like I said, encouraged by this. Armored Core 7 does not need to come out 2 years from now. It could take some time. It could take its time. Obviously, Armored Core had a long break there, but I do hope this is like part of the ongoing rotation from FromSoft going forward.
The adventure of Cookie and Cream, though. Yes. That's what I'm waiting for. I want that remake.
That's what the children are yearning for. It is what we're hearing out there. For Shoot, what do you think their next game is that they put out after Shadow of the Erdtree? Because it's like there's a strong chance it really is just Elden Ring 2, right? That seems possible.
I feel like Elden Ring 2 is like too big of an opportunity for them to just not capitalize on.
Right.
But I also feel like they're a studio that genuinely just does whatever they want. So I would not be surprised if it's just something entirely new.
Sure.
Because they can make a game and they could say like, people could look at it and be like, oh, it's open world. It's like Elden Ring. And it's from the creators of Elden Ring. It doesn't have to be Elden Ring in name, but it could be very Elden Ring inspired and still sell a bajillion copies. But I think Elden Ring 2 is like too big to pass up.
Yeah. I think Elden Ring 2 will be happening, whether or not they get something out before that or not. You're right. They absolutely could. That would be very FromSoft of them. All right, let's move along here. What is wrong with Square Enix is the headline I put down here based on a thread on Twitter from GenVid CEO Jacob Navak, who previously worked at Square Enix. I'm gonna read the thread here a little bit because there's some interesting explanations here and that we could discuss kind of what it means and how kind of what a bummer it is in some ways, but what it says about the video game industry overall. Again, this is from Jacob Novak on Twitter. As a reminder, I reported to 2 CEOs on Square Enix for the better part of a decade and ran a subsidiary. I also correctly predicted last year that Square Enix was going to break exclusivity going forward. I'll note I have no confidential information that I'm basing my arguments on in this thread. To start, we need to look at decisions made on the titles under development within the lens of 2015 through 2022, not the lens of 2023. For example, Final Fantasy XVI would have started pre-production prior to the release of Final Fantasy XV, which was released in 2016. This is a pre-Fortnite era. Budgets are for Final Fantasy VII Remake and into Rebirth would have been around this period as well. This is important to note, and we will get back to it. There's a misunderstanding that has been repeated for nearly a decade and a half that Square Enix sets arbitrarily high sales requirements, then gets upset when its arbitrarily high sales requirements fail to be met. This was not true when I was there, and it's unlikely to be true today. Sales expectations generally come from a need to cover the cost of development plus the return on investment. If a game costs $100 million to make and takes 5 years, then you have to beat, as an example, what the business could have been returned by, say, investing $100 million into the stock market over that period. For the 5 years prior to February 2024, the stock market averaged a rate of return of 14.5% annually. Investing that $100 million in the stock market would net you a return of $201 million. So this is our return on investment baseline. Jacob goes on to say things like, okay, now it's not just what you could do with that money. You have to also factor in marketing costs and like not getting the full $70 from a game. You're probably getting an average around $40, $45. And so you get things like where the game could sell several million copies out of the gate and still be far away from breaking even, let alone making a significant profit. And this is the problem that Square Enix keeps saying that is happening to them, where, hey, where these games cost a lot, and we are putting them out there, and they are not doing what we need them to do to make this whole thing make sense. Now, I think it's fair, Jesse, at this point to be like, why are you looking at making games through this lens? And right. And that is the kind of, well, yeah, of course. But these are giant corporations. This is the only lens they have, it feels like. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think like at a certain point, right, like, what is the difference? Like fiduciary duty. It's like you have to make sure that you are being the most efficient. You are making the company the most possible money. You have to explore those avenues. But like we talk about this all the time, that like AAA budgets are ballooning. Like,
oh yeah,
like games are too expensive.
Decade and a half now, yeah.
And the Fortnite thing is incredibly important because it's like just this morning, right? I didn't know what to play. I was like, I could buy something new. It's like, oh, but a new Fortnite season just dropped. It's free. Like it doesn't cost me anything to hop into it. I'm just gonna go play that. And so you're competing with a lot of things, and these companies it's more and more money to make these games, especially with the remake, where it was like that development got redone like 2 or 3 years in because it was like CyberConnect 2 was involved, and they brought it internally. Like the roadmap for game development is so tricky and so difficult, and there are all these challenges you don't expect, that the costs are just too high. You have to make that money back. And when it doesn't meet sales expectations, it's like, yeah, those expectations may or may not be in check, but it's more money than I will ever see in my entire life. Like it's insane, and it's nigh impossible to make your money back sometimes on some of these games.
Yeah, it's and it's the kind of thing where I think we could stand here and go, these companies need to really change some things if this is the situation that they're in, where they got to make, sell 3 million copies in a month immediately to have any chance of making any money. That like, how did you make the decisions to lead yourself to this point? But it's like, we know the factors. It is they are competing in a marketplace that has way more games because indie development, it has really blasted off. And now there are 10,000 games a year or whatever launching on Steam, and you have to compete with all that. And then on the other side, you have to compete with other major corporations who are putting out games that either look as good as yours or have all the same magic that yours has. And so it's like, we got to like spend even more money to keep ahead of the Joneses, and that is putting them in situations where they kind of like a Final Fantasy has to be this much money in some ways. Now, that seems like it's about to change. Seems like it has to change because they aren't seeing the growth that they were expecting. And Novak points out that's like, yeah, like in 2015, when they greenlighted these projects and when they greenlighted these budgets, there was an expectation that the audience would grow alongside the time spent making these games. And instead, many of the audience went into these live service games. It's that same old story. That's like the gamers are there, they're just playing something else, and it's very hard to get their attention away from that. It's like, okay, so then what is happening here? Like, what happens next? And it's like, yeah, for a big company like Square Enix, the threat here is they take their ball and go home. Like, they just say, we are afraid to make games like that anymore, so we won't make games like that anymore. We're talking about them not really making Final Fantasy games the way they made them before. And it's like, that's scary and a problem. It's like, as much as like they're not necessarily always my kind of game, I feel like they should be there. It's like, feels like a staple of the industry. And the amount of love and time and passion spent on that franchise from the audience feels like it should be enough to make something make sense for this company. And yet there's this huge disconnect, and the companies can't navigate that space. Now, I think a part of that obviously still is a failure of leadership over at Square Enix, right? Get more creative. Is that not the answer?
I mean, the last couple of Final Fantasy games, I'm talking specifically 15, 16, and then the remake trilogy.
14's an exception to all this.
Oh, well, don't worry. I got my 14th point.
Okay, great.
Those games are how do we make the biggest budget, like 16 an example, right? It's like that game looks expensive.
That's the whole idea behind the game,
like, yes. That is the most expensive thing you've ever seen. You can get more creative with it. I mean, like, this is the same company that developed Octopath Traveler, right? Like a gorgeous looking HD 2D game. Like, you can harken back to like retro for Final Fantasy. You can go so many different directions. Final Fantasy 14, an MMO that makes they just announced they have 30 million players, which, like, you know, obviously those aren't all active subscribers, but like that makes a lot of money. Final Fantasy 14 is incredibly popular. They make their money back on that game. They're still releasing expansions for that game a decade later. Like, there are ways to do Final Fantasy without it just being, this has to be the most expensive, biggest budget. Final Fantasy 7 Rebirth is like the everything game. It's like we have anything you would ever want from a modern video game in it. And that costs a lot of money to make. And there's got to be more focused, tight-knit, smaller experiences that people want to experience within the world of that. And you can do spin-off games like Crystal Chronicles or Tactics, or any of these games that like will sell copies because Final Fantasy fans will show up for it and will not cost you hundreds of millions of dollars to make.
Yep, exactly. And it's like, I think right now these companies look at a situation where they have so much money to spend, and they are like, oh, hey, we are afraid because we've been burned a couple of times on our biggest games, so maybe we won't do that anymore. And I think what will happen is they will probably have a few years where it's like, let's go in the direction of what's been working, so let's reinvest in Final Fantasy 14. And in the meantime, the industry actually probably will bounce back in a lot of ways. Spending will bounce back. Players will, like, their interest will bloom again. And then they'll be like, okay, we're ready for something different. We have been spending the last, but, you know, by this point, it'll be like 10 years in Fortnite. And we're actually kind of done now. We're looking for something different in the video game space. What do you have for me? And the companies that are able to get creative and provide something in that moment will probably see a huge windfall. Because if there's one thing that's true about gamers, it's like we get a little bit fickle over time, and we are always looking for the next thing. Now that feels like it's like we're in the moment, like, strangely, where that's not happening. But I don't think that will last forever. So Square Enix can get creative and have something ready to go that isn't necessarily going to rely on being like the biggest blockbuster in the world, but can kind of have a persona-like arc where it's like, hey, yeah, like this one, this is a Final Fantasy game, and it's going to be bigger than the last Final Fantasy game, and it's going to build on the good momentum that the last one had. And if you can be in that situation, it's like, well, every new game can be bigger than the last one, and now you're back onto a chart of growth. And at the same time, you're also delivering, I think, what most fans of the series want. So I'm not like, this isn't doom and gloom entirely. It's just in this moment, this is what is scaring Square Enix away from doing what it's been doing. Now, they're going to go multi-platform. That probably solves some of the problem, right? I don't know. What do you think?
I think they are quickly learning that PS5 or PlayStation exclusivity is actually actively hurting them in terms of copies sold.
Yeah. Because
I'm sure Sony shows up with like a big bucket of cash and is like, we want this exclusivity. And they're like, great, we got an advance on development. We could do whatever we want. And then it comes around to like actually sell the game. And it's like, obviously PS5, when Remake came out, PS4 install base was like the highest it ever was. PS5, not there. Not small, but not nearly as big as the PS4. And so with Rebirth, it was like there are just less people that own this console to buy your game. And 16 is coming to PC. I don't think they've given a date on it yet. I think that Final Fantasy 16 will sell a good amount of copies on PC, and then that will help, give it the legs it needs to hit whatever its goal was. I think they said like 18 months roughly to hit that goal. And so I think they just need to put their stuff on as many platforms as possible, because I think the PS5 exclusivity or the PlayStation exclusivity is actively hurting them at this point.
Yeah. Last thing on this is like, this is how every single one of these companies thinks, though. They're like, if we have a certain amount of money to put into a game, that game needs to do better than if we were to put that money into a savings account or into the stock market. That isn't some weird scenario. This isn't like Square this is how they all basically do that math. It's like, we have money, we want this money to grow into more money, and the reliable way to do that is the stock market. So we're going to get that 15% annual return, or we can make a game and we're going to need that to do a certain profit margin to make the whole thing make sense. And this is true across the board. So when you go forward and you try to understand why these companies make the decisions that they're making, that should inform it. And like when they have that like huge money, like $69 billion, and they spend it on Activision King and all that stuff in Blizzard, it's like, okay, well, is that company going to make us more money in return than that money would have made if we just put it in the stock market? And it's like, yes, so obviously to them it's worth it. That's why in a second they sign that deal, and it doesn't matter how much money it is. It's like that money is now working for them in a much more efficient way. All right. Let's get to the next story. Keep this show going. Alone in the Dark sold below expectations, Embracer Group says. This is from Chris Scullion at VGC. The reboot of Alone in the Dark sold worse than expected, Embracer Group said. As part of its earnings report for its financial year ending in March 2024, Embracer noted that while some of its releases sold in line with expectations, Pieces Interactive's survival horror reboot didn't. It also noted that Outcast: A New Beginning, a sequel to the 1999 action game Outcast, performed similarly poorly. That's a shame. That was a weird thing that they did. I'm glad they did that. Alone in the Dark did seem like it came and went, right?
Yes. I actually did not know that game came out.
I think that's going to be true of a lot of people. Yeah. It's I think this speaks also to like how gaming is a little bit different than some other mediums. I think if you put out a schlocky, mediocre horror project as a movie, and that audience goes, okay, yeah, ticket prices aren't cheap, but it's a couple hours with my friends. It's something to do, and I like horror games, so I'm going to go check this out, and even if it's not great, we'll probably still have a good time. I bet a lot of that stuff all applies to something like Alone in the Dark. We probably would have a good time playing this game, or I would, or maybe I'd have fun, playing it with my friends on Discord while they watch or something. But it's like a $60 thing. It's this whole other proposition of like, this game is much more expensive than you think of when you go to the movies, even though you can easily end up spending that much money going to the movies. But I think people in their mind are like, I'm not going to take a risk on that. Instead, I'm going to go back and replay Resident Evil, something that I know I love, and keep reinvesting my time into that. These kinds of games maybe don't make as much sense anymore in this world, unless they're going to be very good, right? You can't just kind of pop out a mediocre survival horror game and hope you're going to survive, right?
It either has to be some of the best in the genre, or it has to be some of the worst in the genre, to the point where it is like exciting to watch people play how bad this thing is. And no one is actively like making, I shouldn't say no one. Most people are not actively making games that are that bad. And Alone in the Dark kind of fits in this middle, it sounds like, where it's like, sometimes there's nothing worse than a game that's just okay. It's like, there's things to like and not to like. It's not exciting one way or the other. And so unfortunately it kind of just falls to the wayside really easily, especially like when there are so many good games coming out all the time. It's like, you have to be like the crop, and it sucks because it's like, you want to see these initiatives from these companies and developers. Like, you want to see these cool games coming out that are like, oh, Alone in the Dark, like, oh, my childhood, blah, blah, blah. And then it comes out and it's kind of just like, yeah, okay. All right.
Yep.
It just kind of sucks to see.
It's easy. It's like, the thing is, it's so easy to ignore these things because you're right. There's so many options. People's time and money is limited. So everyone's just going to naturally veer towards the safe bets, and that is recognizable franchises that deliver a certain level of quality. That is games you already own, especially live service games, and kind of whatever your friends are into. These are like, those safe bets that you're probably going to get some value out of. Alone in the Dark kind of coming along and not having a ton of marketing behind it, having mediocre reviews. It's very easy to just put that out of mind and move back to all those things that are reliable. This is also Embracer's strategy, or it was at one point, was to make a lot of games like this. I think it also speaks to why Embracer was falling apart. Clearly it fell apart because of just terrible management. That's number one. Really no idea what they were doing over there. But the plan all along was, we're going to make a ton of games like this, and they're all going to add up to make stuff make sense. And there was a couple of games from them recently, Dead Island 2, a handful of other games that did pretty well in the last year. And it's like, but then you're going to have games like this as well that sort of offset that and kind of undo everything that those games did well in terms of like building up Embracer's portfolio. So maybe the Embracer project never made sense either, right?
Yeah, THQ
Remnant
Nordic,
2, thank you,
Embracer,
Arwolves.
kind of all of these things. Remnant 2, great game.
Yes.
They kind of exist to like, let's look at all these like B licenses, right? And like let's produce them and make them, and people will show up. People always have a nostalgia for like this era of 360 sort of games that like either never really hit the highs that they could have or whatever. And it's just like in today, I don't think those projects make a lot of sense. I think with Square Enix, we're talking about how they are actively looking at like, oh, we spend too much money making these games, we're not seeing our return. And then it's like, oh, you got to get creative. And then there are companies like this that are like doing something different, but it's also not working. And I feel like they fall into the same pitfalls of like, why are we doing it this way? Why are we looking at it through this lens? We also need to kind of adjust how we operate. And so it's kind of like two sides of the same coin.
It is.
Companies need to reevaluate like what they're doing and what is not working about these projects.
Yeah, it's like I don't necessarily know what I do if I'm in charge of any one of these gaming publishers right now. I think I don't give up on investing across the board. I think some of these companies are doing that, but I think in this moment, it's like let's like go back to the drawing board on a lot of things. Let's take some chances here and there, but let's do some stuff that is extremely creative that can maybe have a chance of hitting in a couple of years. But let's not necessarily make the $200 million bets. And then if it's Embracer, let's not make $210 million bets. Yeah. Oh boy. Okay.
5,000 cuts on that one.
All right. Let's take a quick break. When we get back, there's plenty more to talk about. XDefiant's doing pretty well. Multiverses director criticized data miners. We'll talk about all of that right after this. All right, right back into it. Let's start here with XDefiant. XDefiant's launch reportedly hit 1 million players in under 3 hours. This is from Cameron Koch at GameSpot. XDefiant is off to the races, having reportedly already reached over 3 million unique players with the first million coming 2.5 hours after launch. The above statistics are according to Insider Gaming, which reports some of the launch numbers surrounding Ubisoft's free-to-play answer to Call of Duty. According to Insider Gaming, the game is well on its way when it comes to surpassing Ubisoft's internal goals in terms of numbers of players. This is one where it's like I really have struggled to understand what it's going to do, like who the audience is. But it feels like there's one out there, and it's just like this is me not having blinders on to a certain extent. It feels like it could do pretty well, and maybe it already is. What do you think? Have you looked into XDefiant at all?
I played 2 matches last night because I learned that it had come out, and I was like, okay,
I've been hearing about this week. Thing. Yeah,
it's like I've been hearing about it. It's like, oh, it's going to be the Call of Duty killer, blah blah blah. We've heard this before. Flash and pan games come and go, and I was like, oh, there's like enough here. There's like enough meat on the bone for this to be something. And of course, they're pulling like all of the Ubisoft, like the Tom Clancy
extended universe, yes.
Ghost Recon Squad and DedSec from Watch Dogs 2 and the Cleaners from The Division,
which I don't hate.
And I think it's like a fun way to bring in factions from other games. Ubisoft loves to do this. They had that mobile game a while ago. I don't remember what it was called.
Sure,
it's like All Stars or something.
I know what you mean. Yes,
similar thing. And so I think that like doing as well as it is right now is very beneficial for the game. Get that in front of as many people as possible, have as many streamers streaming it as possible. The question is like, does it have legs?
Yeah.
Like, are they going to, like, it has a battle pass in there. I didn't see much else in terms of like, okay, is it just like quote unquote Call of Duty multiplayer? Is it just like, okay, we're going to be run like team deathmatch and escort and stuff?
I think they start slow, right? They like, hey, here's a couple of things. Just get used to this game, and we got a long roadmap ahead of ways to drop new content and different ways to play. 3 million is especially impressive, I think, when you remember that this isn't on Steam. This is only through Ubisoft Connect on PC. Now, obviously, it's also on the consoles. So that's going to make, I think that likely makes up the biggest chunk for this game. But it seems like it's doing well enough on PC, and you can't get it through Steam. So it's like, giving some juice to Ubisoft Connect so people actually boot that thing up. And I say that because it's exactly what I did. I'm like, all right, I'll update this thing and sign in again, Jesus. But it's like, I went through the effort to play this game, and it's like, free to play Call of Duty. That is, kind of like maybe a little bit more like the older Call of Duties. There's something about that. It's like, I'll check it out, I guess. I'm at least curious to see why people seem to like it so much. And it's like, well, not everyone does, but there's an audience out there that certainly does seem to like it. The legs question, I think you're right. That is the biggest question. I think we've seen a couple of these kinds of games come along, pop off, and then fall. I think the Apex Legends, though, is the one where it's like that one blew up and was able to maintain something, a business for a very long time. Where, like, in your opinion, based on 2 matches, based on the vibes out there, where on that spectrum do you really think it's landing right now?
I think its biggest problem right now is going to be, it is, and I don't mean this as a negative way, it is simple. It is, you shoot, you crouch, you move, you have an ability and a grenade, and that's kind of all you got. I wonder if that's enough for like higher skill players, because they have ranked modes and stuff, but like I wonder if people will get bored of this game because there might not be as much versatility as something like an Apex Legends or something else. So I think they will have to really be on the ball with updates and with adding new stuff and new factions and everything. I think if this game goes 3 months and there's no significant updates to the game, it might fall off. And that's just the harsh reality of free-to-play multiplayer games coming into the space when there's a bajillion of them to look at.
Right. Now, I would expect, like, my assumption here is that they're ready to go with a really quick roadmap to update the game and keep it fresh. Yeah, and hey, who knows? I think this is the kind of thing where you and I, this is the last time we think about this game. There's a chance that that's the case. And then we find out 2 years from now, it's like massive in China, or it's making a ton of money in South America, things like that. That can happen with games like this now. And Ubisoft's a global company, knows how to like take advantage of that. So that could happen with this game as well. For my part, it's fine. I think it's fine. I'm not. It didn't blow me away. And I guess I did see the appeal of people who are like, hey, this does remind me of Xbox 360 Call of Duty games. It's like, yeah, I see what you mean. And if that is something you're craving, here's a free to play version of that. And that a lot of people are going to find that appealing.
Yeah, and I think you can criticize Ubisoft for like a lot of things across the board.
Clearly, yes.
But one thing they are very good at is supporting games long term.
Yeah.
Like you look at something like Rainbow Six Siege, and that game's, launch was not good, and now it's huge. And like they've really changed that game around. And so they tend to stick around with games kind of long. So like they could give XDefiant the room to like really flourish, especially if it's going to maintain a pretty healthy player base.
Yeah, and they had to figure out Siege, right? Siege didn't have the best launch, so they've been through that process. It seems like that enabled them to create something that is going to have a stronger start than Siege did with XDefiant. And it's like, okay, well, we're starting from a higher point. Can you like take it to where Siege is? And if they can, that is another massive, consistent revenue stream that they can rely on, which is what they're going for here. That's what they want.
I am being reminded that Hyperscape was a thing, though, and so it could go the route of Hyperscape.
There is the Hyperscape example. Yes, Hyperscape, for people who don't remember, was their battle royale shooter, like battle royale, hyperspace, like virtual world shooter. It didn't last very long at all. But hey, For Honor did last pretty long. Another game where they supported for quite some time. I think it gets maintenance updates. I don't know if it gets new content now, but it lasted for a long time. All right, moving along here. Multiverse's director criticizes data miners for being spoil sports. This is from Darren Bonthus at GameSpot. Multiverse director Tony Hun, I'm going to say, has criticized data miners for spoiling upcoming content in the game, including the reveal of future fighters and stages. Data miners have regularly trawled through lines of game code to uncover information on unreleased content, and Hoyne says that these leaks have the developer and fans of Multiverse feeling deflated when they're robbed of a surprise reveal. I agree. I don't think people should ever talk about something before the developers talk about it. In my opinion, that's just of course.
Absolutely.
This is it's unavoidable, and I don't think it actually ruins all that much. I think it just kind of shifts around where the excitement comes from, and if your audience is big enough, most of them actually probably aren't paying attention to this stuff. Obviously some of them are, and that stuff seeps into the community in a bunch of ways. But then it's like, man, is that thing real? Are they really going to announce that? And when they announce that, sure, maybe it's not the massive pop of like that came out of nowhere. But I think people getting their like hopes confirmed is a different kind of pop that is just as valuable. I don't think this really ruins much. What do you think?
No, I've never been in the camp of like, oh, I learned about something before the official reveal. Like, oh no, I didn't get, marketed to the right way or whatever, however you want to view it. But I think there's also like, you can have fun with data miners. Like you can put stuff in there for them to find and like make an ARG or like do a whole thing where it's like, oh, we found what does this mean? And like, because data mining is inevitable. If you put your game on PC, it is going to be data mined. Like that is just how this works. You can try every which way to try and stop it, but it will happen. So use that to your advantage. Don't just like be mad about it and be like, oh no, they found the thing we put in the file and then they dug it up. It's like, this has been happening for years. This is like not a new problem.
Yeah.
And so have fun with it.
New Medic says Remnant 2 did that. They made stuff impossible to find without data mining.
And
Very
it was like
clever.
a whole ARG that led to a new archetype for the game. Like it was super cool. Like they had fun with it and it paid off and the community got really involved in it. And everyone just was like, oh man, that was a really awesome thing for that game to do.
Right. I think what we're talking about here is understand the ways that your community wants to acquire information about your game and use it. Like build it into the ways that your company operates and announces things. Don't assume that you have full control of the message. If data mining is going to happen with your game, make it a part of the process. Make sure that everyone involved in the marketing team understands it, and let them come up with new ideas about how to use it, because they probably will if they are aware of this. Just being like scolding people for doing something that they're doing out of passion because they really like something. That's a losing game. That's not worth it. It's just not worth the squeeze there.
You should be thrilled that you have fans that want to know more about it. Will take any drop of information you have. Yeah. Yes,
absolutely. All right, let's keep this going. New Fortnite season adds Fallout's T60 power armor and Wastelander Magneto. This is from Tom Ivan at VGC. Epic Games has revealed that Fortnite Battle Royale Chapter 5 Season 3 Wrecked is coming. Players can now start downloading the latest Fortnite patch on all platforms ahead of the post-apocalyptic themed season's launch later today. The Mad Max-inspired season includes a greater focus on vehicular combat as players explore a new wasteland biome in nitro-fueled moddable cars. Players will be able to unlock Fallout's T60 power armor by leveling up to Rex Battle Pass, while bottles of Nuka-Cola will restore some health, of course, over time, and some shield as well. A Wastelander Magneto skin will be unlockable through Battle Pass quests in July 2, and that's like the OC, the new, like one of their new characters there. I don't know, something about this, this combination of IPs and how they're remixing all this stuff looking very nice to me. I'm like, oh, I might go. It's time to go check in on Fortnite again. Like every couple of months, I'm there. I think this is one of those times I might check in on it. How about you?
I played a match of it this morning.
Oh, really? Okay. Yeah, hell yeah. Is this stuff in there, or is it like?
Yeah. So Magneto is, so for those who play Fortnite, you have like the Battle Pass, and then you have like the additional character. Like last season, it was Korra from Avatar. And so those unlock like later in the season. They have their own separate quest line. You can unlock Magneto and the Wastelander Magneto. But like,
so
the Fallout
is it the X-Men Magneto? Because it's like Wastelander Magneto makes it sound like some different thing.
So my understanding is that it is Magneto, X-Men Magneto, and then like the alternate skin will be the Wastelander Magneto. Okay. They do two skins for it. I could be wrong on that though. I'm not up to date on my X-Men.
Sure.
That being said, Fallout like the armor, I thought would be like on the map or it would be in the store. It's just part of the battle pass. You just play the battle pass, you get like multiple versions of the T60 power armor and Fallout. And I was like, oh, okay, that's something they could have easily sold for $20-$30 on the store, and plenty of people would buy. I'm sure there'll be a variant on the store. But all the Mad Max stuff, like it's very Mad Max inspired in the battle pass. Like you have an emote where you're breathing fire. You have one where you're like riffing a guitar and like on a car. Like it's some cool stuff. It's fun, and the map itself changed, so you have a whole desert biome now, and it's very, very, very car focused. Like you get a car, you drive over these boxes that add turrets to your car and boosts and all this other stuff. There's big rings of fire. There's just a big battle dome in the map that you just drive around in, and like there's people cheering, and it's pretty cool.
Okay, yeah,
I'm really feeling it.
That sounds very cool. I think that there's I get why people are like, we're very excited to go back to the default original season 1 map for Fortnite. But for me at this point, I'm like, yeah, no, I get the Fortnite heads love that stuff. I think I like the wild stuff, the very different stuff, even more personally, as someone who is much more casual with Fortnite. And so this stuff sounds like, okay, yeah, the waterbending stuff seemed neat. I'll check out this now because shifting things up and making it more about vehicular combat. All right, cool. That sounds fresh and interesting. I'm going to check that out.
Yeah.
Also, I think I still am in a Fallout mood. I know people are like, oh, everyone stopped talking about it because they binged it. I'm like, I'm still thinking about it. And that T60 armor looks cool in Fortnite, actually. So
and they've got some cool variants of it. There's some cool different versions of it.
Yep, absolutely. Okay, let's keep going here. Switch surpasses DS to become the best-selling system ever in Japan. This is from Nintendo Everything. Switch has overtaken DS to become the best-selling game system ever in Japan. That's according to the latest data from Famitsu. Earlier today, the outlet reported that Switch sold another 40,000 units. The console's overall total now sits at 32,903,701 units. To compare, the DS sold 864,129 units total in Japan. Switch secured the record during its 377th week on the market. Switch is also close to taking the worldwide record. As of March 31st, the device's overall sales stand at 141.32 million. The DS worldwide is at 154.02 million, and the PS2 is around 160-ish. They won't tell us exactly what it's at, although previously they said 155. Hey, the Switch's recent resurgence, that's weird to say it that way, but it's resurgence in Japan, where it's like it was selling well, and then in the last year or so, it has sold like better than it has in quite some time. I think this is part of the reason why we continue to wait for a Switch follow-up, because Nintendo's like, man, our home territory is crushing this, and we're making a lot of money still. And so it crossed the finish line to become the best-selling hardware in Japan. Do you think it gets to that global number, 160 million-ish?
I mean, at the rate it's going, it could. I couldn't tell you how long it would take at this point, because I feel like every single human being I know at this point owns a Switch. And I know these numbers don't reflect that. Like, obviously, there's way more people than Switch owners. But it just keeps selling. And honestly, like, they haven't put any, I don't want to say they haven't put anything out, but like there hasn't been a huge Switch game in a little bit. And so to see this like just skyrocketing and keep going, it's like people are still hungry for that entire catalog, because the Switch at this point has a fantastic catalog of games.
Right.
Like you can't go wrong with getting a Switch, because you can pretty much play most things you want to play. And so I think, you give this thing another year or two. Yeah, why not? It could if it doesn't make it, it'll get pretty damn close.
Yep. Yeah, and it's I think the thing that really matters, I mean, I care about this because I'm a nerd, and it's a stupid thing, but it's like, oh yeah, it'd be neat if the Switch was able to get up there with those consoles. That's awesome. The thing that I think really matters to these companies is the software sales number, and for that, it has been an unqualified, masterful success for Nintendo. Their first system that has had more than 1 billion pieces of software sold. They're at that mark already, and they are expecting to sell another 160 million pieces of software for the Switch in this next fiscal year. And so, yeah, that's where the real money is made. And it's like, okay, regardless of whether it gets to 160 million units sold or not, having 160 million pieces of software sold this year is the thing that they were going for. And they've done that. selling a piece of hardware where people want to buy a lot of games. That's the way they make this whole business go around, and they've succeeded at that. All right. Director George Miller's perfect Mad Max game would be made by Kojima. This is from Willow Rowe at Kotaku. Mad Max franchise creator George Miller already knows what he wants from another video game set in his iconic universe. Ahead of Furiosa, a Mad Max Saga's release on May 24th, the director revealed that his dream would be to have none other than Metal Gear Solid and Death Stranding mastermind Hideo Kojima take the metaphorical wheel. During the red carpet for Furiosa, Miller spoke to Gaming Bible and revealed that he would support another game in the series if Kojima would take it on. The choice of Kojima makes a lot of sense given the mutual respect the two creators have. Have you see like the Instagram post of George Miller seeing Kojima at the premiere for the movie and being like, "Oh, my best friend in the world." Yeah, it's okay. That's why he's saying this, I think. This is throwing that 2015 game under the bus a little bit. He basically does say, yeah, that game wasn't what we wanted to be. It wasn't as good as I wanted it to be, is his exact quote. It's like, you know what? That's what a lot of the reviews said. It's kind of, there were some mediocre reviews, but I played that game a little bit yesterday, and I see some promise, and I know a lot of people really love it. But I also get being like, I have a homeboy, and he makes games, so he would make it even better. Of course, that's what you say, right?
Yeah, that's just you gassing up your friend.
Yeah,
You're just
exactly.
Like, yeah, this Hideo guy, he could do it easy, and it's like, yeah,
Yeah.
Of course. I mean, look at the catalog of games.
He scanned my soul, and he's got it captured in his offices. If he could do that, he could do anything.
You see Death Stranding 2? That game had a car.
Yeah,
he could do Mad Max.
Listen.
Like, oh yeah, sure.
Mad Max, where you have to deliver packages that are precariously stacked up in your trunk. I like that. That sounds like a good game to me.
You just put Death Stranding in the desert. It's basically Mad Max at that point. Like you've already done it.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Hey, sounds good to me. I probably wouldn't. Nothing like this is actually going to come of anything, right? This is just talk.
No, this has one of two routes, right? It's just talk, nothing matters, or it gets so like memed into existence that like they tease it and then it's like, oh, is it happening? Is it not? And they just like keep this fun bit going forever. But
which is
I don't
fine.
think it ever happens.
Yeah, again. I think this is the kind of fun teasing that is probably meaningless. That the Kojima universe is good at. Like I think them always being like, yeah, maybe we'll do something like that. Yeah. That's great. I'm totally down with that.
It's also great marketing for the new movie that is coming out right now, right? Like
yes, it is.
They got everyone talking about Mad Max. Maybe they sell a couple extra copies of the old Mad Max game. They get people to go see Furiosa. Like it all
makes sense.
Machine.
Real quick, news story just broke a little bit. It's confirmation of something we talked about on this show. Bill Kuhn, who is a known leaker over there at Deal Labs, has a story out about confirming that they've heard about that Astrobot game that I've mentioned. Let's read the story here. This is from Bill Kuhn over at Deal Labs. It seems that chances of a PlayStation event happening in May 2024 are only increasing after our exclusive information shared yesterday about the imminent announcement of the long-awaited game Concord. Another PlayStation exclusive is likely to appear during the same period. The first rumors were made by blah, 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 Jeff Grubb, blah, blah, blah. Nick Baker confirmed the 28th, which, hey, that's the date I'm also hearing repeatedly now is the 28th, which is still in May. You down bad, dirty bastards out there, get a life. 28th, still May. But yes, several rumors have pointed to that event happening. And now Deal Labs is saying that they think a game called Astrobot, just straight up called Astrobot, may get announced at the show. That is one of the games I'm expecting PlayStation to launch this year. So if that's the case, it probably does have to show up here. Does that sound good to you? I'm an Astro fan, so I'm ready for
Astrobot. Like I'm gonna be real. It's the first I'm hearing about this. I'm so on board.
Yes.
Oh man, a new Astrobot game. Oh, give it to me right now. I'm ready for it.
It's if it is what I want it to be, which is like, we've had Astro be like the tech demo thing for a while, and it's been the best tech demo thing you've ever played in your life. What if we just took that, obviously the Astro's rescue mission, full VR game, obviously that's what it is, but still it was to show off.
But it's very good.
Yes, and it was to show off what that hardware could do. It was an extension of what they did with the games that would come with the PSVR. Make a full Astrobot game for the PlayStation 5. Yeah. That sounds fantastic. I really, really want that. Again, of course, there's always a chance that this is something that comes with the PS5 Pro. I think the chances of that are minimal, but there's still a chance. Why wouldn't they just make a full-on Astro game, especially after it was so beloved when they did that Astro's Playroom game with the PS5 launch? So
it was the best launch title that game had.
Easily, yes. I am very excited about this. And it's got me to a point where it's like across the board. I think I'm excited about all the showcases. Gaming's in a bad place. A lot of people losing their jobs because studios are closing. Yes. It's rough out there, and we're not going to forget about that. But that doesn't mean I want like, okay, well, the games that are still coming, I've completely written them off. I'm not at that point. I want these things to be good and exciting so that we can sort of bounce back in a strong way next year. And it kind of has to start here. We keep talking about the industry needs Switch 2. The industry needs Grand Theft Auto 6. What if we got to a point where it didn't need those massive tentpoles to hold up everything else? What if there were some games announced in the next month that could do it all themselves? That would be really cool. And I'm hopeful that we can get to that point. Not that I think Astrobot's going to be something that sells 25 million copies, but I don't give a shit. I just want to play it. That's all my feeling is about that game.
Yeah, I'm ready for it.
Me too. Yeah, so 28th for that, likely, not guaranteed, everybody. I'll just keep saying, I've only heard May for sure, and then this 28th date is being repeated in a lot of places. And then, very quickly after that, it is June, and we are doing Summer Game Fest stuff, and everyone's got announcements then as well, including Nintendo and Xbox. So it's very close. I should start packing. It's that close.
I'll pack 5 minutes before my flight.
Oh, same. That's when I'll actually do it, but I should start now. All right, that does it for the news. Got a poll question we're going to get to here in a second. While I get that set up, Jesse, why don't you tell people where they can find you, what you have going on, all that good stuff.
Cool. All right, so you can find me on Twitter at Jesse Vitelli. You can find me on TikTok now. That's a thing that I do occasionally.
I like your TikToks.
Thank you. Just my name on TikTok. You'll just find me, Jesse Vitelli. You'll find me there. As for things I've got coming up, some stuff I can't talk about yet. Sorry to be that person, but just can't. And then I'll be at Summer Game Fest doing some previews. The Nasty Boys are going to roll through for the other stuff. And so keep the eyes peeled. Summer Game Fest kind of be all over the place. It'll be a good time. And that's honestly all I really got going on right now. I'm just trying to get through the first 2 weeks of June. And then I can take a breath and figure out what's next.
Yep.
But until then, I'm just kind of bouncing around.
Looking forward to it. And then I think what we should do is we'll come back from Summer Game Fest and you get back on the show. We'll do like a wrap up on that show, kind of things that you saw, talk about some games, stuff like that. Does that sound good?
Sounds great.
Hell yeah. I cannot wait. All right. Poll question. Let's bring that up right here. Would you want to use Steam on an Xbox? Let me refresh that because this is not the full results here. There we go. There we are. All right. Would you want to use Steam on an Xbox? 66% said yes. 34% said no. Yeah, I struggle to understand why you wouldn't at least want it as an option. Don't allow it to happen. But that's these are people just saying, well, if it's there, I'm not going to use it. No. How about you, Jesse? Would you, if Steam was an option on an Xbox and you had an Xbox in front of you and you could get a game on there, would you use it?
So are we? Sorry, not to get too into this, but are we saying that the Steam client?
Steam client, yeah. Be able to buy a game through Steam and play it on your next Xbox. Yes, that is.
Yeah, why not?
That's something that they're apparently thinking about. Yes.
That sounds great. Honestly,
yep.
Especially if it connects to my already existing Steam library. I don't have to do any weird things. Yeah, absolutely. That sounds fantastic.
Right. And obviously there's a chance to maybe not every single game works, but likely they all would for the most part. Yeah. So yes, I'm right there with you. All right. New poll question. Do you think going back to multi-platform will be enough for Final Fantasy? We can get the results of that and discuss it on Wednesday of next week. It's not next week we're leaving, right? It's the week after that. That's right. Okay. So Wednesday of next week, we'll be back. Monday is Memorial Day. We are off. We will be back for the Bombcast on Tuesday, though. Look out for that. And between now and then, here on Giant Bomb, we will have Bombcast Revengeance today. We're going to do a UPF today. We're going to get back into Elden Ring, do some multiplayer. Of course, you should go to Ticketmaster.com, search Giant Bomb, and get your tickets for the Bellwether, our live show in Los Angeles. It's going to be a really good time. You're not going to want to miss it. Jason Try will be there. Lana Pierce. It's going to be a good time. We're just going to hang out and talk about dumb stuff and then have some friends up on the stage. It's going to be a good time. All right. Jesse, thank you so much for spending today talking with me about video games, man. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. It's always a blast to be on the show.
Absolutely. And thank you all for listening. You're the best audience in gaming. Until next time, have a good one. Take care of yourself, and goodbye.